You're listening to The Streaming Wars, the podcast that discusses all of the latest happenings regarding your favorite streaming services. Find out which service is winning the war this time around.
Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of The Streaming Wars. I'm Dustin, Tony is with me, and we're here to cover everything from March 3rd through the 9th. We have a couple of different service updates, we've got some more sports news, and our main discussion is going to be Paramount Plus, as it launched last week, actually the same day that our latest episode released, but we're going to talk about that and a little bit other things related to Paramount Plus. So with that, let's start off with service updates. So the first thing I want to talk about is Google TV with Chromecast is adding kids profiles this month in the US. Now, the specific focus of the articles that were out there was that Google is adding the ability to create kid profiles so that you could use the device for your children and control the content that they have the ability to watch. It also allows them to have customizable YouTube suggestions and things like that, which obviously helps YouTube's algorithm and Google as a company as a whole. But I think most importantly, what I found really unique about this is that it sets the device a little bit different from some of the other devices that are out there. Obviously, Amazon has the ability to have kids profiles. Roku does not have profiles. And I think outside of even the kids element, I think this is a really interesting idea because having the ability, let's be honest, most households that are going to have a streaming device in general, not maybe I would say most devices are going to have at least more than one person in the household. And if that's the case, there's a good chance that you watch different types of content. And I say this because most people are already using streaming services and have multiple profiles on each streaming service specifically tied to the content that specific person watches. I have a profile that I watch specific content. My wife has a different one. My kids use a different one. And every single one of us watch different things. I don't want to get suggestions for stuff that my kids are watching. I don't want to necessarily see recommendations on the same stuff that my wife likes to watch without me. That's not the kind of content that I want. And it's really good for the algorithms for not just the streaming services and obviously this new thing with Google to suggest content that we want to watch, specifically to get us to, watch that content. Either it's on YouTube and there's an ad presented, whether it's on an ad-supported service that is going to play ads and that content is going to, help that company earn money or whatever. That's the whole reason why profiles exist. So it's surprising, one, that Google is doing this, surprising in the sense of that it hadn't happened sooner. I'll just say that. But I think this is really smart to do for not just the kids aspect, but the adult aspect.
Yeah, this is really surprising. The only other device that has a device level profile are the Amazon Fire devices. My daughter has an Amazon Fire tablet, and we have the kids mode enabled. So basically, she has her own special operating system that has a bunch of games and a bunch of weird content that she likes. I don't know exactly what it is, but she enjoys it. So that's the only type of device level profiles that I really have seen. I think this is an interesting concept. I think there's a better integration with having a device level profile on Google because Google also owns YouTube, and you can have a better integration there of this is the kids profile. It can only show kids related YouTube content. I think that's a little bit more clear and obvious. But if you look at devices in general, there are no device level type profiles that happen. Yes, you have permissions due to we're going to download certain content ranges, or are we going to allow apps that have explicit content or something like that, right? Usually the restrictions on content fall to the services themselves. So Disney Plus, my daughter has her own profile just so that it's, tailored to all kids content related, and she shouldn't have access to watching more action shows. It's just more fits her age. Same thing with Amazon, same thing with basically any other streaming services that has, profiles. And it would be nice to see on a device level, okay, this is a kid's profile, and then every streaming service just will get that information and then automatically sign in the app that current way. And I think that would help, especially parents as they move forward of trying to remember, okay, is this, signed into the service? Do I need to make sure when I start something that I'm in the right profile? Kids are kids and they're smart and they figure out technology, and all of a sudden they're going to open up their favorite app and it's all of a sudden going to play something they're not supposed to, just because they are very curious people. So overall, I like the idea of the device level profile, because then you can have like even like device level, like the profile level, like apps. And so like this one person might just like these few apps, the other person might like these other few apps. I don't know. The more I think about it, it's actually kind of an interesting idea. You can even, as an advertising perspective, you can almost personalize the devices themselves and, script that information, because each person has a different profile. I'm getting a little bit away with the conversation here, but I think Google TV taking a device level profile idea I can see that having some benefit. And I'm curious to see if this bet for them works. And if it does, are we going to see like Roku and other, device providers kind of have a similar idea there?
Yeah, and just piggybacking off of something you said, the one thing that I'm hoping for is that there is a way to figure out how to integrate the profiles that Google's doing device specific to profiles specific on the streaming services themselves. Obviously, because I've got a kid's profile on Netflix for my kids, I want them to be able to access that. I don't want them to be able to access all of Netflix by accidentally clicking on not their profile, but somebody else's profile. I don't want them to go on HBO Max and have to click on their profile, but they could click on another profile. And the thing is, there is parental controls as far as once you're into the profile. You can't get out of HBO Max's kids profiles without a PIN if you've put that in place. But the issue is, of course, yeah, you have to be there first, and that's the thing. And how many times have we just been randomly logged out of something when we're using it, and when we log in, it logs into the default account, and then you have to switch profiles from there. So I'm hoping
Disney Plus, you just log in and it brings up the screen of all the profiles. Yep. And I have no clue that my kid is going to recognize, okay, which icon is hers. She could pick any of them. And then if the default first one is going to be like mine, which I'm an adult, obviously, then that she might just click the default, or she might click, some other account. So even from the non-default scenario, you're presented with the screen, there's like a 1 in something chance that they're going to click on their own profile, which means there's just a high chance that they can get off of the profile that they're supposed to. So I think the current state of profiles and kids profiles, it can definitely be improved. And I think that this Google TV experiment is a new idea and a new attack, a new approach to this problem, because there are some weak spots, there are some gaps into streaming services and dealing with kids and kids content. And
honestly, this is really, I think, the first step to making things way more specific to the individual users in general. And I think it's a good step. All right, so moving right along, the other service update we have is Warner Media's CEO, Jason Kilar. He had talked about a variety of different things. One of the things that he specifically talked about was the upcoming AVOD tier, which he specifically didn't give any details, but he did talk about how the entire intent behind it is that it turns out that most people on this planet are not wealthy. And
really,
and as they go into other markets outside of the US, they have to approach it they can't charge as much as they're currently charging here in the United States outside of the US. So that's one of the driving factors for the AVOD tier, is that when they go into these international markets, they need to be offering a cheaper alternative to then what we are currently the only option that we have here in the United States. So that's part of it. Also, he talked about some Europe rollouts. He also mentioned some things about the movies and how they've been pleased with the results from the movies that are being shown on HBO Max at the same time they are in theaters. But overall, I think the big takeaway is that when it comes to money, they know that AVOD is something that they desperately need, and we know that it's also coming in the next few months. The latest assumptions is that it'll be here before June, so it's only a matter of months away, which means it's only a matter of time before we're hearing more details about this. But that's the big takeaway, is that AVOD is very important to the further success and the growth of HBO Max.
I'm obviously glad that AVOD's coming out for HBO Max. I think that's going to be a big push in subscribers and subscriptions as they move forward. It's really going to, more people will be more apt to that. And not just because there's ads, people aren't apt to ads, but people are apt to, cheaper services. I just want to push back something on what you said about, Kilar saying it's good that AVOD services are there because then they can have cheaper alternatives for people in different countries. I want to push back a little bit, because if you look at Netflix, yes, they have a it's not the highest streaming service. It's not the highest price for a subscription, but it's, I think it's number one. It's number 2 or 3 in terms of price, especially in the United States. But in other markets, it's not like a 1-to-1, correlation with the U.S. price to the price of in their market. So like the euro, it's not a 1-to-1 correlation, adjusting for currency and inflation, all that stuff. In some markets, it's vastly different. And so I think India, it's like what, $3 or something. It's I definitely need to get fact checked on that, but it's substantially lower than what is the United States. And so if HBO Max really wanted to push themselves, they can lower the price into other markets, because in some of the areas that they're trying to reach, there's just so many people, there's so many devices, there's so many different opportunities, so that you can bring down your price a little bit, but you can kind of recoup that with volume. And so that's why I want to push back a little bit on AVOD. It's not the end-all be-all solution for them to grow in the future. There's plenty of streaming services that do not have AVOD that have proven successful. I mean, the two leading ones in the United States are Netflix and Disney Plus, and they don't have ads. So the main thing for their growth isn't going to be AVOD. It's going to be its content. It's going to be its ease of use and a bunch of other things. So that's, I think that's one thing. So yeah, there's one thing I just want to push back on. But another thing that I found interesting about this article, and it's at the very bottom, it's, Kilar drops like 1 to 2 sentences about CNN. And he's excited about the opportunity with CNN. There have been talks, rumors, reports, however you want to describe it, that Warner Media is looking to spin up a standalone CNN subscription service. I think that, we collectively push back, you and I, Dustin, of like, why would you do that? But it's nice to see Kilar be like, okay, hey, that's actually, CNN creates good content. It's a good business. And he liked to see an opportunity that there could be even more. And I know that he's saying that as, in charge of Warner Media in general, but it makes me excited because he recognizes the value that CNN has and the CNN, media business. I know that a lot of times people say CNN and they have the media association with like news, and that's a whole, another can of worms that we don't talk about, but they also have on their channel really good documentaries, high production quality, informative content. They had a couple series where they just documented like the 20s, 30s, and 40s. I mean, they just went on every single decade, and it was a really informative and really great series. And so it's nice to see Kilar recognize that CNN has value, and I'm curious what their plans are going to be. I don't think a standalone service is the best idea. I think they could bring that content into HBO Max and really provide a unique corner of content that you're not really going to see on other streaming services. So it gives me hope that he recognizes that there is an appeal, there is an allure, that CNN brings something to the table, and he's going to try to incorporate that in the Warner Media, portfolio of things.
All right. So then moving into our next topic, specifically, this has to do with sports. I know we talk about sports a bunch, but sports are a big deal. Yeah. So there's a couple different small things. Premier Lacrosse League has officially been announced that their games are going to be moving to Peacock Premiere. Also, the WWE Network will go dark as of April 4th as they shift to Peacock. Details for that have also been released as far as what that is actually going to be. Initially, Peacock will have a bunch of content, but they will not have the entire extent of what was previously available on the WWE Network. They have the intent of getting all of that content on there, hopefully by the time of SummerSlam, which is in August of this year. But that's what's happening there. But the big sports news over the past week is that Amazon is reportedly close to a deal to carry more exclusive NFL games. Specifically, they're looking at Thursday nights as the premier place to find Thursday Night Football. Right now, I believe CBS and Amazon are splitting the rights for Thursday Night Football. And it looks like starting in 2023, it might be Amazon exclusive for those games.
I know people are probably tired of us talking about sports, and I think sports are really important for streaming services. Once again, Amazon has made a deal with the NFL in carrying games. I think that's kind of the norm, that they will host, Thursday night games. Last year, they hosted a Saturday night game. It's a big deal, but it's kind of the norm. What gets me, what I find interesting, is the exclusivity part of this contract. And that's important because most NFL games, especially United States, live on 3 channels, CBS, Fox, and NBC. There's sometimes they might be on another channel, but that's like that's very rare. So them getting the exclusive rights to a game is pretty big, because then that forces the football fans, NFL fans, if they like this team, or if they just like football just on Thursday night when the week's been stressful and you just want to chill out and just watch something that doesn't really have a plot, you don't have to really pay attention. It forces people to check out Amazon Prime. So I think the exclusivity part of this contract I think it's genius. I think it's a great way to get people subscribing to Prime and the Prime ecosystem and keep them involved. And it's a whole new, it's just a new class of subscribers. And I wonder if we could see, this idea of the exclusivity part of like taking something that is on a linear TV and then it only be exclusive on a streaming service. I wonder if we're going to see that trend by other companies. But I think that this is a bold move by Amazon. They have the cash to spend on sports rights, sports streaming rights. They're just really expensive in general. So they have the cash. This is a bold move, and I think it's a slam dunk move. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, for the growth of Amazon, I think it's important. It's interesting because obviously Amazon has the money to do basically whatever they want when it comes to streaming, but we've always been told when executives from Amazon talk about streaming is that it's a way to get customers to subscribe to Amazon Prime, to utilize Amazon Prime, and then obviously use their platform to buy products. That's what they've always said. But it seems as if this actually goes through, this would be probably, it would be the biggest position to get Prime to really get into to really be used by a lot more people. I mean, to be fair, they've got some good shows, they have some good movies, but they're not very regular as far as how often they release those things. Yes, they've won some great awards, for a variety of different series and films that they've had, but when it comes to content in general on a normal basis, they have, a steady stream of content that they license from elsewhere, but as far as new original content, they don't have anywhere near as much as some of the other players out there. Honestly, I put them right in alongside Hulu. Is like, there's some new content all the time, but there's just not very much, because it feels like the service itself is secondary to something else. Hulu is secondary, obviously, to Disney Plus, and that's why they've got what's going on over there. For Amazon, I think this is a position for them to really show that they're all in on streaming, and it puts them in a unique spot where, they will have a lot of people who are subscribing to the Prime service, whether or not it's for shipping or not, just to be able to watch these games.
I completely agree. I think one interesting part of this deal is, obviously transactions are a deal between two parties. There's obviously both parties have to get something out of it. Obviously, this deal from an Amazon perspective is supposed to gain more Prime subscribers. I think that's a clear part of this relationship. But the NFL, they're really sensitive to ratings, to how many people watch games. I think every year, around every February, people talk about, okay, how many people watch the Super Bowl? And that's actually kind of important. There's the past 4 years, there's been some rhetoric about how certain things that are going on have affected the NFL ratings that have happened, that occur. We're not going to get into that, but those are brought up, and NFL owners really pay attention to that. NFL owners are the key stakeholders into the NFL making these types of decisions. And so Amazon really is going to have to deliver so that they can keep, the NFL's attention, that they can keep, getting these contracts. Or maybe if it's not Amazon and somebody else outbids them, they're going to have to prove that they can get the amount of viewers or get a substantial amount of viewers if you have these exclusive contracts that, putting a game on like CBS, NBC, or Fox would. And I think that's important. That's an important part that I don't think people are going to talk about, because we're the streaming wars. We're going to talk about the, streaming part of things, but this is a transactional deal and the NFL has to get something out of it. And so when this contract ends, I am kind of curious what the NFL's position is going to be. And depending on the NFL's position, that might affect other sports leagues that might look into, let's just have games streamed exclusively on streaming services. NBA has a lot of revenue, MLB. There's a lot of factors going here and a lot of second order consequences that I feel like could be easily missed if you don't flush them out. So overall, this is a big bet, and I hope it works out for all sides.
All right. So then with that, we're going to move straight into our main topic of discussion, which is the launch of Paramount Plus. Now, Paramount Plus launched last week. I ended up subscribing. Like it? Well, man, that's a good question.
I have not had the time to subscribe to Paramount Plus and check it out, so I'm going to be the person who knows nothing about the service and how it interacts. So, Dustin, how did you like it? Was there enough content? Was the app easy to use? What are your thoughts?
As somebody who never used CBS All Access, I can't compare the two because I was never a CBS All Access subscriber. Specifically, I looked at this as, well, they have some content that's unique and interesting. There was content over the years that had released on CBS All Access that obviously is porting over to Paramount Plus, and I was like, oh, maybe now's the time to check it out. But the other thing that kind of enticed me was the fact that they had an offer where it was 50% off a year's subscription if you paid up front for the first year. So I was looking at Paramount Plus specifically to serve a couple of different things. One, I like the idea of having live news because I don't have live news on any of the other services that I have outside of Peacock. I'm not a huge fan of what Peacock has as far as news. CBS tends to be more neutral when they talk about political stuff and things like that. So I was like, oh, okay, this will give me another option of news outside of just having the stuff from MSNBC or NBC News. So that was one. I don't watch a lot of sports, so I didn't really care about the sports. It was really just, well, it's dirt cheap. I get live news, and on top of that, they'll have content that, I can watch. And there was some content that I know, like my daughter's gotten recently into watching some of the Nickelodeon shows. They were actually on Netflix, but they're also available on Paramount Plus, or there's extended versions in the sense of like there's more seasons or more current episodes that are available specifically on Paramount Plus. So when there's that, I was like, okay, well, for $50 for an entire year, I can at least give it a try because I subscribe to the premium version. And that comes out to less than I'm basically paying for any of my other services right now. So I was like, it's not really a matter of cost as far as trying it out. And then obviously they've already promised that their theatrical movies that they release are going to be coming to the service within 45 days of being in theaters. Quiet Place Part 2, I'm interested in seeing. I'm interested in seeing Mission Impossible 7. And, Paramount has a decent run of films that release that I would be interested in watching as well. So I figured, hey, what the heck? For a year, let's just try it. Okay, so let's get into the service itself. So the service itself, signing up was pretty self-explanatory. It was pretty easy. Nothing really. The only thing that is because I signed up technically the day before it launched. On the day it launched, I got like a push notification on my phone that said, download the update for Paramount Plus, and I did, and it just immediately switched over CBS All Access to Paramount Plus. The icon changed, was no big deal. As far as the computer goes, it was the exact same thing. CBS All Access, the login immediately worked for Paramount Plus. There's a couple of things that I'm not a huge fan of. One, before I get into the content, there's no watch list feature, which I can't comprehend why they don't have that, because that is something that literally every streaming service has. You find a show that you want to watch, you put it on a watch list. Literally every service that I have has that, and there's even streaming devices like the Google TV or the Roku that you can put things on a watch list so you can watch them later. They don't have that, and I don't understand why, because there are some shows on CBS that I used to watch that I was like, oh, maybe I'll come back and watch these. And I was like, but I can't save them. So there is still something going on with the adding on Showtime, because that was the other thing I was interested in, was when you had CBS All Access, you could add Showtime to your subscription for a nominal upcharge per month. And there are a lot of shows. I used to actually be a Showtime subscriber when I subscribed to cable, and there was a lot of shows I liked watching on Showtime. So I thought, oh, okay, well, I'll get Showtime and add it on. Can't do that yet. I don't know when it's going to happen, but you can't do that. When I was actually subscribing to CBS All Access the day prior to Paramount Plus launching, I looked at some different FAQs and some comments online and things like that talking about how to add Showtime to your bundle, and it didn't give you the option at all. There was no option. Everywhere it told you to go, it literally just showed you a spot that was blank. Everything that was telling you what to click on wasn't there anymore. So I don't know when that's going to happen, because I was looking forward to potentially adding Showtime to this and then having the content from Showtime, which I would watch on a regular basis, but it's not there yet. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on with that. When you get to the content side, boys, there's not a lot there, to be honest. I mean, there's a lot of content in general, but it seems to be at the same level as Peacock when it launched. There is some original content that they ported over, obviously, from CBS All Access. There's content, there's movies that weren't there that are part of the Paramount library and things like that. But overall, there is not a ton of content. The thing that's really annoying is that there are lots of shows that when you click on the show, it shows you the episodes that are available, and there are like weird groups of seasons and there's weird groups of episodes that are available and not available. And obviously I understand that some of that content is licensed elsewhere, but I think that's the biggest problem when it comes to Paramount Plus as a whole. And while they have been touting that they're all about making sure that they can still license content, I think the biggest problem is the things that they have that people would probably actually, go after to watch are already somewhere else. And that's the biggest problem. I mean, unless you are specifically looking at watching current episodes of content that is on CBS as a way to watch it without, the commercials because you're watching it live, or you don't have an on-demand option or anything like that, then this service is great for you and the price is great. But there's not a whole lot here that I could see myself going back to. Like, I feel like this is exactly like Peacock, but I don't pay for Peacock because I have Xfinity Internet, so I get it for free. And I think that's the biggest problem with Paramount Plus is it exists. There's some content there. Occasionally you'll find something. But when it comes to what I'm looking for, there's not enough there to make me go, oh yeah, I can't wait for this. Now, obviously that could change. If I can add Showtime for a nominal upcharge and I was only having to pay like a couple extra dollars on top of Paramount Plus to have Showtime, maybe, I could see it being more worthwhile because there are shows on a regular basis that are available on Showtime that I would want to watch. It's strange what they choose to do when it comes to some of their shows. The very successful shows, before they, I guess, realized we really need to get into the streaming side of things, they went and licensed their popular shows, which makes sense. It brings in money. But how long before they actually start bringing some of this stuff back? Or how long is it before they have more new original series or series that they keep for themselves? Because that's the part that I'm not seeing here compared to somebody like HBO Max, which specifically sought back and went after like Friends, one of their shows, to keep it themselves instead of paying the licensing rights or earning the licensing rights from a streaming service. And obviously, Warner Brothers still licenses content elsewhere. Everybody still licenses content elsewhere. Even Disney has some content that is on a regular basis cycled around at different streaming services. But I think it's important that you have a consistent basis, and I think the things that are going to draw people into Paramount Plus are going to be the same things that are going to drive people away because they're going to realize that there are certain things that they're looking for that aren't even available.
That makes a lot of sense, and I can totally see your frustration there. Once again, I'm rooting for CBS. I'm rooting for Paramount Plus. From the outside, looking in, for me personally, yes, March Madness is coming up, and I would like to watch those games live, and a lot of them are on CBS, so that would be pretty fun to watch. But other than that, the biggest draw that I can see from Paramount Plus is the backlog of movies from Paramount, and it just that backlog of movies and content seems like its most important asset right now. But like you said, I can just go on Prime and rent whatever movie I'm interested in at the moment. So they have the Fast and Furious series, but I can just go to Prime and just download that, rent that for a night. So I understand your frustration. Hopefully over time they add more original content. They can grow their service that way. But right now, from what I understand, from looking from the outside and hearing your perspective from the inside, it's another nascent streaming service just starting from not necessarily the beginning because of CBS All Access, but its scope is wider. So it is in the scheme of trying to go for a grander scope, it is still a very infant streaming service. 1 year's time, let's circle back and see what happens, see what the service can have. Is it going to grow at all like Disney Plus, which I doubt it can replicate that success, or HBO Max, Peacock? How does it go against those players? So I wish Paramount Plus the best, but yeah, it just does not sound like a service that I would be personally interested in. But hopefully they can have enough content in the future that it would be something that I would want to check out for the long term.
All right, so with that, that's going to wrap up this episode. If you're interested in seeing any of the trailers that have released over the past 2 weeks, please head over to our YouTube channel where we have a specific playlist that showcases all of the new trailers, from the newest trailers to the oldest trailers over the past couple weeks. As we build those individual playlists, you can check those out and subscribe to those playlists to find the trailers as they release. I've been trying to make sure that we update that every single day. Outside of that, if you are interested in reading not only the news topics we talked about here, but also the news topics that also happened over the past week, check out our show notes, which can be found at thestreamingwars.io for all of the links to all of the articles that we discussed, and obviously the ones that we didn't. In addition to that, you can follow us on Twitter and join our Discord for all latest news and articles that we talk about. And you can follow us on Instagram for all latest announcements related to new episodes of the podcast posting. You can also send us an email at thestreamingwars@gmail.com with any questions, comments, concerns, feedback, or topics you'd like us to talk about in the future. And wherever you're listening to this podcast, please take a moment to leave some feedback, as that is always greatly appreciated. One last announcement, moving forward, we're going to be switching the podcast to every other week, specifically because there's just not a ton of news. With Paramount Plus launching and no other streaming services launching in the near future, there's not a ton of news outside of a bunch of the entertainment stuff that we're not really focusing on as much as we used to. So rather than trying to struggle to figure out what exactly to talk about if there's not a lot of big topics to talk about, we're going to have an episode every other week, specifically focusing on those big moments within the streaming wars. So starting next week, we will be having the week off, and then we'll have another episode in 2 weeks going forward. So with that being said, hopefully you guys will continue to join us here with the streaming wars. And for Tony and myself, this has been the Streaming Wars, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for listening to the Streaming Wars. Check us out on Twitter and Instagram. Also consider supporting us on Patreon. Links can be found at thestreamingwars.io.